Following the 1993 season, Tennessee quarterback Heath Shuler announced he'd be foregoing his senior year and declaring for the NFL draft. And who could blame him? Shuler was coming off a great junior season, where he threw for 25 touchdowns and nearly 2,400 yards and finished second in the Heisman race. It looked like Shuler's decision had paid off when he was chosen third overall by the Washington Redskins in the 1994 draft. But the North Carolina native's career went off the rails shortly after arriving in the nation's capital. Shuler started just 18 games in 2 years with Washington before being benched for Gus Frerotte, who was drafted in the 7th round of that same 1994 draft. Shuler was traded to New Orleans, but was plagued by injury. And in 1997, Football Outsiders named Heath Shuler the NFL's least valuable quarterback. In 2004, ESPN rubbed salt in the wound, rating Shuler the 17th biggest sports flop of all time. And in 2007, NFL Network called Shuler the 9th biggest bust in NFL history. But what if Shuler had stayed at Tennessee for his senior season? Would he have been better prepared for the NFL? What would that senior season look like for the Vols? It's a question the living fan has pondered ever since Shuler announced for the draft. It's commonly thought that Shuler would be a leading Heisman candidate and that the Vols would be in contention for SEC and national championships alike. I decided to take the question and pose it to an artificial intelligence. I used ChatGPT, the AI chatbot that's been making waves around the internet for the last several months. I used ChatGPT to give me a prediction of what Tennessee's 1994 season might have looked like if Heath Shuler had stayed for his senior year. Now I'm going to give you the game-by-game breakdown the AI eventually worked out. But first I want to talk a little about the process and the problems I faced getting ChatGPT to give me a satisfactory answer to this problem at all. When working with an AI, the better your prompt is, the better response you'll get, and I thought I had come up with a pretty good one. I asked ChatGPT to write a summary of the University of Tennessee's 1994 football season as if Heath Shuler returned for his senior season. Use Shuler's college stats from his career at Tennessee to project his senior season results. Also use historical data of the actual 1994 Tennessee football season. I thought this prompt would give me a nice mixture of projected stats for Shuler mixed with actual results of the 1994 team. ChatGPT, though, gave me some results that were a little bit funny. Here was the AI's first response to my prompt about Shuler's fictional senior season.
The University of Tennessee had high hopes for the 1994 football season, with star quarterback Heath Shuler returning for his senior year. Shuler had an impressive college career, throwing for 7,085 yards and 53 touchdowns in his 3 years at Tennessee.
7,000 yards? Wait, that doesn't sound right. Is it trying to tell me that that's what Shuler would finish with in his career, or does it think that's what Shuler went into his senior season having already at Tennessee? Well, it turns out neither. Those 7,000 yards and 53 touchdowns are actually Shuler's high school stats. When I asked ChatGPT to use historical data, it did, just from the wrong place.
With Shuler back for his senior season, the Volunteers were expected to have a potent passing attack. Shuler had completed 64.3% of his passes for 2,353 yards and 25 touchdowns in his junior year, and his accuracy and arm strength were expected to only improve in his final year. In addition to Shuler, the Volunteers had a talented group of receivers led by Nilo Sylvan and Corey Fleming.
Well, there's another mistake made by the AI. Corey Fleming graduated in 1993, so he would not have been able to come back in 1994 to play with Heath Shuler. That's a mistake I didn't catch in time, and so all the subsequent prompts I gave ChatGPT thought that Corey Fleming was still playing for Tennessee in 1994. So we're just going to have to pretend that Corey Fleming found an extra year of eligibility to come back and play with Shuler.
The 1994 season got off to a great start for Tennessee, with Shuler leading the team to wins in their first 4 games. In those 4 games, Shuler completed 75% of his passes for 1,111 yards and 13 touchdowns, with Sylvan and Fleming combining for over 600 receiving yards and 7 touchdowns. The Volunteers suffered their first loss of the season in Week 5 against Florida, but Shuler bounced back with a strong performance against Georgia the following week, throwing for 335 yards and 3 touchdowns in a 41-23 victory. Tennessee then won the next 2 games before suffering a heartbreaking 31-27 loss to Alabama. Shuler threw for 356 yards and 3 touchdowns in the game, but it wasn't enough as the Volunteers were unable to hold on to a fourth-quarter lead.
Well, let's see. An early season loss against Florida, a beatdown of Georgia, and a heartbreaking loss to Alabama. Turns out maybe ChatGPT does understand Tennessee football in the 90s just a little too well.
Despite the loss, Tennessee still had a chance to win the SEC East and advance to the conference championship game with a win over Vanderbilt in the regular season finale. Shuler came through in the clutch, throwing for 305 yards and 4 touchdowns in a 65-0 blowout win.
Oh, and a beatdown to Vanderbilt. That sounds like Tennessee football too.
The Volunteers finished the regular season with a 9-2 record and a number 8 ranking in the AP poll. Shuler had an outstanding senior season, completing 68% of his passes for 3,746 yards and 36 touchdowns, both career highs. Sylvan and Fleming also had excellent seasons, combining for 118 receptions, 1,756 yards, and 16 touchdowns. In the Citrus Bowl, Tennessee faced off against Penn State, but Shuler and the Volunteers were unable to overcome a stout Nittany Lions defense in a 31-13 loss. Despite the disappointing end to the season, Shuler had cemented his legacy as one of the greatest quarterbacks in Tennessee history, and his senior year had been one to remember.
All of those things sound pretty realistic for Tennessee in 1994, but I still wasn't happy with this response from the AI. For one, it got games out of order, and when I asked it to use historical data, I was hoping it would use the actual schedule that Tennessee played in 1994. So I gave another shot. I asked it to refine its answer to give realistic breakdowns of each game in the season. It told me it couldn't.
I'm sorry,
Being
but
an
as an
AI language model,
model,
I cannot generate a breakdown of each game in the 1994 University of Tennessee football season with realistic details. It did, however, give me some stats for one game, being the Georgia game. And the stats were somewhat realistic. Tennessee 41, Georgia 23, Shuler throwing for 335 yards and 3 touchdowns. All of that's great. It even gave me a notable moment in the game. Tennessee scored 24 unanswered points in the second half to pull away. I love all of that. Give me that for every game. So I asked it to do that for every game in the 1994 season.
Sure, I can provide a detailed game-by-game breakdown of the University of Tennessee's 1994 football season, assuming Heath Shuler returned for his senior year.
But what it returned were games that Tennessee did not play in 1994. A season opener against Louisiana Tech before moving on to Georgia Southern. These weren't games that Tennessee actually played. I wanted the real schedule. So I asked ChatGPT to use actual opponents Tennessee played in 1994. It once again gave me UNLV, not UCLA, as the season opener. And it also stopped at Game 7. When I asked it more specifically to use the complete 11-game regular season schedule that Tennessee played in 1994, it still gave me incorrect games. And so I was not happy with the results that the AI was giving me. I found a workaround, though. I went in and told the AI, month by month, who Tennessee played and let it play out 1 month at a time. And so here you have the definitive Heath Shuler senior season 1994 Tennessee football. September 3rd, 1994, Pasadena, California. Tennessee 31, UCLA 24. Heath Shuler leads the way for Tennessee, throwing for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. Late in the fourth quarter, with the game tied at 24, Shuler leads a game-winning drive, connecting with wide receiver Corey Fleming for a 35-yard touchdown pass to give the Vols the victory. September 10th, 1994, Tennessee goes to Athens and loses to Georgia 28-21. Now wait a minute. This is a game Tennessee won in real life with Todd Helton playing quarterback. Nothing against Todd Helton. He was a great first baseman. He should be in the Hall of Fame. And he was a tremendous athlete, but he wasn't the quarterback Heath Shuler was. And Todd Helton beat Georgia in Athens in 1994. I have a hard time believing Heath Shuler wouldn't have done the same. But we're going to go with what ChatGPT tells us. And so it says that Heath Shuler had a solid game for Tennessee, throwing for 250 yards, but not enough to overcome a strong Georgia defense. Late in the fourth quarter, with Tennessee down by a touchdown, Heath Shuler leads a potential game-tying drive. It stalls out near midfield as the Vols turn the ball over on downs. Things are going to get better, though. September 17th, 1994, in Knoxville, Tennessee 35, Florida 31. Now we're talking artificial intelligence. Heath Shuler has a monster game for Tennessee, throwing for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. Joey Kent has a huge day, catching 10 passes for 200 yards. Danny Werfel throws for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, but also tosses 2 interceptions. Late in the fourth quarter, with Tennessee down by 3 points, Heath Shuler leads a game-winning drive, connecting with Joey Kent for a 25-yard touchdown pass to give the Vols the victory. September 24th, 1994, in Starkville, Tennessee 24, Mississippi State 17. Shuler throws for 250 and 2 touchdowns. The Vols defense steps up, forcing 3 turnovers and limiting Mississippi State to just 300 total yards. Late in the fourth quarter, with the game tied at 17, Heath Shuler leads a game-winning drive, connecting with wide receiver Corey Fleming for a 15-yard touchdown pass to give the Vols the victory. Sure am glad Corey Fleming found that extra year of eligibility. We move on to October. October 1st, 1994, Washington State comes to Knoxville and Tennessee wins 42-21. Heath Shuler continues his impressive senior campaign, throwing for 350 yards and 4 touchdowns. In the third quarter, with Tennessee up by 2 touchdowns, Heath Shuler connects with Corey Fleming, 75 yards, to put the game out of reach. October 8th, 1994, Tennessee 28, Arkansas 24. Heath Shuler leads the way for Tennessee, throwing for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. Charlie Garner adds 100 yards on the ground and a touchdown. Arkansas quarterback Barry Lenny Jr. has a big game, throwing for 350 yards and 3 touchdowns, but also tosses 2 interceptions. And here's where I really fall in love with AI. October 15th, the third Saturday in October, 1994, Tennessee 31, Alabama 28. Heath Shuler has another big game for Tennessee, throwing for 350 yards and 3 touchdowns. Wide receiver Joey Kent has a huge day, catching 9 passes for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. Alabama quarterback Jay Barker throws for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, but also throws 2 interceptions. In the fourth quarter, with the game tied at 28, Heath Shuler leads a game-winning drive, connecting with Joey Kent for a 15-yard touchdown pass to give the Vols the victory. October 22nd, 1994, Tennessee travels to Columbia and beats South Carolina 28-14. Heath Shuler has a solid game, throwing for 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. Tennessee's defense steps up, forcing 3 turnovers and limiting South Carolina's offense to just 300 yards. In the third quarter, with Tennessee up by 7 points, Heath Shuler connects with wide receiver Corey Fleming for a 50-yard touchdown pass to extend the Vols' lead. According to ChatGPT, November was also successful for Tennessee. The Vols would beat Memphis 45-10 on November 5th, with Heath Shuler connecting with Joey Kent for a 75-yard touchdown pass, showcasing Shuler's arm strength and Kent's speed. November 12th, Kentucky at Tennessee would be Tennessee 35, Kentucky 21. In the third quarter, with Tennessee up by a touchdown, Heath Shuler connects with wide receiver Corey Fleming for a 50-yard touchdown pass to extend the Vols' lead. And then finally, in the season finale, Tennessee 28, Vanderbilt 14. Tennessee's defense limits Vanderbilt's offense to just 200 total yards. James Stewart adds 100 yards on the ground. Heath Shuler leads a game-clinching drive in the fourth quarter, connecting with Joey Kent for a 20-yard touchdown. So a fantastic fictional season wraps up for Tennessee, and Heath Shuler coming back for his senior year to lead the Vols to a 10-1 regular season. And I asked ChatGPT, if Tennessee had had a season like that, would they play in the SEC championship game, and who would their opponent be? And here's the result it gave. And oh boy, what a championship game this would be. Tennessee 24, Alabama 20. Heath Shuler has a solid game for Tennessee, throwing for 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. Wide receiver Joey Kent catches 7 passes for 150 yards and a touchdown. Running back Charlie Garner adds 100 yards on the ground and a touchdown. In the fourth quarter, with the game tied at 20, Heath Shuler leads a game-winning drive, connecting with Joey Kent for a 25-yard touchdown pass with just over a minute remaining to secure the victory for the Vols. I then asked the AI to tell me what Tennessee's bowl game would be, and it gave me a weird matchup. It put us against Penn State in the Citrus Bowl, which would not be unusual for Tennessee in that time period, but would be impossible considering the SEC champion would be playing in the Sugar Bowl. Once I reminded ChatGPT of the fact that the SEC champion plays in the Sugar Bowl, it corrected its prediction and gave me a bowl game of Tennessee versus Ohio State in the Sugar Bowl, where Tennessee wins 28-24. In the fourth quarter, with the game tied at 21, Heath Shuler leads a game-winning drive, connecting with Joey Kent for a 15-yard touchdown pass with just under 2 minutes remaining to secure the victory for the Vols. I wanted to know a little bit more about Tennessee's postseason, though, so I asked ChatGPT if Tennessee had the kind of season that they had, going 10-1 in the regular season, winning the SEC championship, how might Heath Shuler have fared in the Heisman Trophy balloting? It first only wanted to go so far as to tell me that Shuler would have done very well in postseason awards, but I asked it to take a step further and actually recreate Heisman balloting with Shuler having that kind of year. And ChatGPT's response was Heath Shuler, Heisman Trophy winner. He is widely regarded as one of the best quarterbacks in the country, and his success in leading the Vols to a strong season makes him a top contender for the Heisman Trophy. Rashawn Salaam comes in second, Kajana Carter, Steve McNair, and Kerry Collins round out the rest of the top 5. I finally asked ChatGPT for one more thing. If the University of Tennessee finished with a 12-1 record, won the SEC championship, and defeated Ohio State in the Sugar Bowl, where would they have finished in the AP balloting? At first, the AI only wanted to tell me they would finish very high, probably in the top 5. But I asked it once again to go one more step further and to give me an actual top 10 ranking of the teams in 1994, with Tennessee having that season. And here we go. At number 1, your national champion, Nebraska. Penn State number 2, Colorado number 3, Tennessee comes in at number 4, followed by Florida State, Alabama, Miami, Ohio State, Auburn, and Oregon. Overall, this is a fun and interesting experiment to do with the AI. I was a little surprised and a little disappointed that ChatGPT seemed reluctant to do some of what I was asking. I don't know why it refused to use Tennessee's 1994 schedule when it obviously has access to that kind of info. It was occasionally giving me names of players on other teams, so it knew what was going on in that era, but it wasn't always giving me the response that I was looking for. It also gave a lot of generic responses that kind of surprised me. I don't know if you picked up on it when I was going through them, but all of Shuler's stats ended in either hundreds or 50, 250 yards passing, 300 yards passing. It also often gave me stats for the opposing quarterback where the stat line would be 3 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. And it was that same stat line over and over again. They were very generic statistics. There's a YouTube channel called Wrestling Bios that does a similar exercise with AI booking fantasy 90s matches in WWF and WCW. So obviously ChatGPT can do this kind of alternate reality timeline. And this is something I'd like to do more of. So if you have any suggestions of alternate history for Tennessee football or any other Tennessee sport, drop a suggestion and I'll see what I can do with it. Thanks for watching, and thanks for all you folks on Rocky Top getting your corn from the jar.
Thank you for watching this video on the hypothetical 1994 football season for the University of Tennessee with Heath Shuler as their quarterback. If you enjoyed this content, please consider liking and subscribing to our channel, Corn from a Jar, for more sports-related videos and analysis. We hope this video provided an interesting look at what could have been for Tennessee football in 1994, and how Heath Shuler's return for his senior season could have affected the team's success. Don't forget to follow us on major social media platforms for more updates and discussions. Once again, thank you for watching, and we hope to see you in the next video on Corn from a Jar.